Good morning and welcome to Coffee with Alain. As you can see, I have a special guest here today. Before I introduce him, I want to remind people, go to enjoylifesafely.com and get signed up for that newsletter if you're not yet. It'll go out this weekend. A lot of information on staying safe, defending yourself, enjoying life, and being exceptional. You have heard me talk about the Korean Martial Art Festival before. And I actually got my Korean Martial Art Festival mug here today. And you have heard me talk about all of the great people at that event, and that the most important thing about that event to me is meeting and interacting with a lot of great instructors, a lot of great students. A couple of the people that I've had a chance to interact with and meet and become friends with, and I thought it was 5 or 6 years, Dixon reminded me yesterday, it's been about 10 years since Grandmaster Forelli and his son, Senior Master Nikolai Lee, have been coming to that event, and we've gotten to know each other. Both great instructors, both great people. Jim Forelli is on the mug there right beside me. Nikolai didn't teach that year, so he wasn't on the mug, but he's been teaching different years as well. And it is just a great honor for me to have Senior Master, Doctor of Chiropractic, Nikolai Lee as a guest today. And I want you to tell folks a little bit about yourself and a little bit about your background if they don't know you.
Sure. Well, thank you so much, Master Priest, for having me on. So, like you said, I'm Nikolai Lee. It's nice to meet you guys. I've served several different roles in my life. I started training in the martial arts back in 2010, 2000. So, that's been quite a process in teaching there. I also served as a paramedic for 6 years and then became a chiropractor, like you said, after that. I've had the pleasure of teaching at the collegiate level. I teach board review. I've recently released a book, which I believe we'll get into here in a little while. And I'm also starting a brand new company called the Triage System. That is a productivity and focusing app for students, just seeing what kind of things they normally struggle with on the day-to-day life and helping them focus in a little bit. So that's kind of my background. I'm pretty far away down in Florida from Alain. So this is pretty cool to be able to talk this far away. We never thought something like this would be possible, right?
That's right. And another instructor from the Korean Martial Art Festival, Dixon Kuntz, just said hello to us, and great guy and a supporter of the show. And I know that you know him from Korean Martial Art Festival. Thank you for being here, Dixon.
Yeah.
I want to talk a little bit about martial arts. I know your dad has been doing martial arts forever, and he's I'm closer to his age than your age. So we've both been doing it a little bit longer than you have, but you've been doing it since 2000. So 25 years.
Yes, sir.
What personal things have you gained the most from your study of the martial arts?
Sure. So I want to talk about a little bit on how I got there, because that kind of is going to answer the question. So, like you said, I grew up watching my dad do martial arts since I was an infant. It's always been in my life. Him and my grandfather founded our organization, the American Hapkido Alliance. So it's been kind of cool watching that happen. It was founded in 1993. So watching that happen and develop has definitely affected me. Every young kid wants the ability to be tough and to beat somebody up if he has to, right? But I had fairly low self-esteem as a kid. And I finally decided to start training in 2000. And at first, it was more of, I want to learn how to be tough, and I want to learn how to throw people and do those things. And I just thought it was so cool. And it was a lot about myself. And I don't think that's a bad place to start, but it was about that. And then, as you remember, the lovely 9/11 event happened in 2001. And I remember I was in 6th grade at the time. And I remember seeing it happen, and it just hit me a little differently. I'd been flying back and forth by myself to Dallas to go see my dad, usually once, sometimes twice a month, but usually once a month. So I was used to flying on airplanes back and forth. And whenever 9/11 happened, it kind of got real for me personally. I'm like, you know, I could have been on that plane. What would I have done differently? So then my focus shifted. It was no longer about developing myself, but it was more about protecting other people. And I think something I've learned in martial arts is that the real heart of what we do, although it is tough, you do get banged up, you know, it's not gentle by any standard, but it's really the development of yourself and the development of other people. And that's something that I've learned from doing martial arts so much. We have this saying in our school that we are developing a community of modern warriors. So a warrior is not just solely focused on fighting all the time. It's not about getting into a cage match and, you know, beating to each other to a pulp. It's more about what kind of people are we helping develop. And that's the biggest thing that I've seen within myself and things that I've picked up in doing martial arts. And then you get into the community aspect, right? In Lake City, we had nobody to train with. So I was by myself the majority of the time. I get to train every other weekend, maybe. So I remember growing up and reading about all of these masters, reading about Grandmaster, you know, McKenzie and Dr. Kim, Master Barista. I remember reading a couple articles about you. So that was kind of cool whenever we got to go to the festival to meet all these people that at the time were these heroes that you read about, but now they're friends. So the community aspect within the martial arts to just training. So kind of a long answer to your question, but you know, it goes deep there, I think. And I think that's kind of continuous at the martial arts, just talking to you, talking to, I think Master Pinto and I were talking at the last festival about the same kind of idea, you know, so.
Well, thank you. I'm sorry that little hiccup we had, you were big, and then there's a little hiccup there when you went small. But I appreciate that answer. Yeah. That reminds me, I wrote my first book and articles for Black Belt Magazine back in '96. Makes me feel old that I wrote that stuff so long ago and started. Yeah. Couple things when you said about that. Okay. One, you said about getting banged up. Yeah, this happened at the Korean Martial Arts Festival this year. So, but also when you talked about, you know, developing good people, that is something I've always really respected, that everybody that comes up from your organization attends that festival, and you usually show up with a good group of people.
Yes, sir.
Not just you and your dad instructing, but other people, and some of them are instructing now too. Mm-hmm. Always been just a good group of people, very respectful, polite, good martial artists on and off the mat. And I really personally believe that that's one of the biggest things about martial arts too. One of my first Hapkido instructors, an American Hapkido instructor, first trained with him back in '89 when I got out of the military. When I started teaching, because nobody else was doing what I do in Missoula, he told me, Alan, if you're not teaching and showing character development through the martial arts, if all you're doing is doing technique and not the other, you're missing out on what martial arts can do for people. Yes. And I think your group shows that as well. And I think that's so important.
I've noticed that, just processing this out a little bit, throughout my chiropractic history, my medic history, my martial arts history, the one thing that I've noticed, and I'm not necessarily talking about myself, but I'm talking about instructors as a whole. An instructor is not really measured by their skill. They're more measured on the people that come after them. You know, so your students are really the testament to what you've done. So you're able to look in Missoula and say, okay, what have I done in Missoula to affect the people around me? And sometimes what they do is more of a testament than what physical skills you can do. So
that's true.
Cool. Who are you producing, you know?
I want to say good morning to Samuel. Appreciate you being here and saying good morning.
Morning.
Dixon asks a question. As the more prolific author, this question is more for Alan, but to both of you, would you rather be known for writing a novel or a primer? I'll go first and let you think about that, because I've written both. Novels are great entertainment. They actually make more money. I mean, your most prolific authors that make the most, your Stephen King's, Harry Potter series, all these different people, they make the most money. However, I think if you can write a book that helps somebody change their life and help them progress, I mean, I think that's more fulfilling a little bit to me. I mean, if Survive a Shooting saves one life, and if it helps people feel a little bit more comfortable and not as afraid of living because of some of the things that go on in our world, that makes me feel better than somebody enjoyed the novel. So I think both have their place, but I think, if we can help someone, to me, that is a little bit more important than the fiction writing.
I think from my perspective, I actually agree with you quite a bit. It kind of depends on what your motive is and what you're trying to do. I have both grown from reading nonfiction and fiction. Do you like Audible by any chance?
Yes, I drive a lot, so I'm always listening to audiobooks.
Yeah, I'm obsessed with it, and I kind of have this rule to where I try to have a fiction and a nonfiction book going at the same time, but only one of those. So I don't like to stack up like 5 books that I'm reading on nonfiction, So I bounce back and forth, but I find that depending on the book, I can learn just as much from both of those things. As a writer, I've done more primer, but I have had, and I haven't really said this out loud, this is the first time, I've had a nonfiction or a fiction book that I've been writing for a couple of years now. And it's nice just to kind of brain dump, just kind of get stuff out there, and you're kind of able to create this little world. So I do think that they can both affect people. They can both teach those lessons. It just depends on the mechanism that the person can receive it.
Oh, great. Yeah, when you talk about multiple books, I always have 8 to 10 books going at one time. Always one novel. Won't have more than one novel going at a time. But then I'll have a book on health, a book on martial arts, a book on success, maybe a book on communication, maybe an autobiography or a biography. So I'll always have 8 to 10 books, 6 to 10 books going at one time.
Right.
And then in the car, I'm always listening to Audible.
Yeah.
I don't think I have any fiction in Audible. I have tons of books. I'm always reading a novel, but all of my Audible are nonfiction, either health or business or communication, success, some biographies. But yeah, so I always have something in Audible going, and 6 to 10 books going.
Sure.
And that includes at least one book or two going on the Kindle, as well as all my paper.
Right. I'm slowly getting there. I've always been a paper guy until Audible. And now I'm starting to see the value of having a Kindle, because you can have all those books in one little thing. So if you're traveling,
It is. I was always a paper guy until a couple years ago, where I was given a Kindle for Christmas. And now there's a friend of mine, former law enforcement officer, and he's an author, Greg Ellifritz. Every other week, he puts one of his blog posts or all these currently free books on Kindle. And if you got to get them quick, because they only stay free for a day or two.
Sure.
But I'm always seeing his list and saying, "Oh, that looks good. That looks good." So I probably have over 1,000 Kindle books downloaded. Some I have bought, but a ton that I got when they were on a free special.
Right.
So it's sort of a convenient way to have a lot of books, a lot of reading handy, and you can travel with it and so forth.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
What has been, if you had to pin the top book, what has been the book that has affected you the most or changed the way that you look at the world, whether that be business, personal life? What's been your number one?
And pinning it to number one is so difficult. But if I had to pick one, it would probably be Dan Millman's Way of the Peaceful Warrior.
Okay.
I've read it multiple times. I get something different out of it each time. It also hooked me on all of his other books that he's written since then, and those I've gained from. It allowed me to connect with him, because an interesting quick story, when I was in law school, I was reading Everyday Enlightenment. It was a brand new book that came out by Dan Millman that year. And he wrote in there a friend of his, Craig, who was a heart surgeon until he lost a couple fingers in an accident. So then he went to law school. I mean, talk about a guy that has education.
Okay.
But when I read this, I'm like, that's Craig Eddy, the third year, because I was a first year law student. I go, how many heart surgeons are going to law school that lost fingers?
Right.
I knew him.
Right.
So so I saw Craig in the hall. I said, you're friends with Dan Millman? He goes, oh yeah, we go way back. I said, he mentioned you in his newest book. He's like, really? Cool. So then I wrote Dan and said, I'm going to law school with Craig. He's like, oh, cool. And so I actually got to have some conversations through email and stuff. We've never met in person, but we've had email and short phone with Dan Millman. And I have a book that has been percolating for a couple decades that I need to write one of these days that is similar to The Way of the Peaceful Warrior.
Okay.
He wrote that sort of autobiographical. I mean, it's fiction, but there's a lot of his personal life in it. I want to write where I'm in South Korea learning Hapkido, but I'm going to create a fictional character, an old Korean man that teaches me. And that's The Way of the Warrior. And that's Discover the Warrior's Edge. He's the one that taught. And so I have that idea. It's been percolating forever, and I need to get it out one of these days before I get old and die. But that is probably why Way of the Peaceful Warrior has been the most impactful book.
Sure. That's cool.
A long answer to that, but that's why. And
just so y'all know, we did not plan that. I just asked him off the cuff there. So yeah. Good
now
job.
We're talking about books. You just came out with a great idea. I mean, because when I was in Korea and other places, I was grabbing notebooks and writing stuff down. And I still go back to look at those notebooks and different things to remind me, because as you and I both know, the Hapkido curriculum is huge. And sometimes you need something to remind you of different parts and different things. And what do you teach at which level? But you came up with a great thing, a journal for martial artists to help them keep track of what they're training. And then when they get it done and filled, they got a nice book filled with great information on the shelf rather than old notebooks and stuff like I had.
Right.
Let's talk about why you came up with that idea and show a copy of the book and explain why you came up with this and how you developed this project.
Sure. So just like we require our students to have a notebook, and within that, they write down all of their personal notes on what they've learned. And it's a great thing. We also require history and everything that they have to learn as well. So it's fairly intense, but it's a lot of chaos a lot of times wrapped into one little book. So what I wanted to do was create something with the white belt in mind. Have something going that is a good guide for whenever they're not really sure what they should be writing down or what they should be doing. Now, I wanted to develop it to where anybody of any rank could use this. So it's not like a white belt, guide. But that's kind of the person I had in mind whenever I was making it. And I remember being in class and watching a technique, and, I would see it and I'm like, that's really, really good. I should write that down, because just like you said, I knew I would forget it. Whenever I was trying to figure out my title, I'm like, what was the inspiration? I need to write that down. So that's actually where the name of the book came from. And I thought it's kind of punchy, but it kind of says what I wanted to say at the same time. Whenever you open up the book, the very first page is information. And if you guys are just starting to train, or if you're new to training, I can tell you that the longer you go, the harder it is to remember the fine details sometimes. So if you're thinking, oh, well, when was my actual first day? If you have that recorded down, there is no second thought. You don't have to think about, wait, was it the beginning or end of that year? What was going on? That may not be important to you in the moment whenever you first start, but as you go, it does become substantially more important. So it's a nice little guide of saying like, hey, where am I at right now? What's going on? Whenever you get to the next page, I thought it was important that we create a goals list. Everybody's goals are different, and it is going to be relative to your age. I mean no disrespect whenever I say this, but I never had the goal of doing extreme martial arts. That's not my thing. I don't need to do 540 triple jump backflip, triple indies. Like, this is just not my thing. But that might be somebody's goal. So this would be a good place for you to be able to write this down and self-reflect. So we write down, hey, 2025, these are my goals. I want to have a full split by the end of this year. Well, later on, you're able to come back and actually see, okay, well, what were my goals? Did I get there? And how do I get there if not? The best thing that you can do, whether that's life, martial arts, business, is introspection. So looking at yourself and saying, okay, did I hit those goals? And if not, what was the reason? Then we get into the daily session notes. Now, I do have a friend of mine. I don't know if he's watching or not. We call him George. His real name is Zsolt. He's a Hungarian friend of mine. And whenever they create notebooks, you have a little bit of freedom in how you create it in our school. I typically did more categories. So like as I learned different hand strikes or kicks, I would record those in those categories. I'm very intellectual in how I think. So it wasn't a journal as so much a manual for me. But George, who is actually now a master, he's now a master Zabo, has a unique way of doing his notebook. And he's not the only one. He was just the first one I saw do this. To where instead of having categories, he recorded that day's events. So who he trained with, what was he doing? And I love that idea. And I've been mulling that over ever since. If you're watching, great job, man. Brilliant. But I was kind of like, okay, well, if I combine that thought with my chiropractic students that I deal with, self-reflection is important. So whenever we look at this, the very, very top of it there, we obviously record the date, time, and training length. But the very first thing you see is focus discipline of the day. So what did I focus on that day? Whether that be, getting a Kimura in, or whether that be doing a proper side kick. Then you can go into the techniques practiced, and you can actually write out, okay, what were the specific things that I learned this day? It's important to see what I struggled with. We all have off days. Master Brees, I'm sure you've had this to where, you're training as hard as you can, but for whatever reason, it's just not working. We all have that. So it's important to record that. But the very next question is, what did I improve? There's a beautiful balance of introspection where you look at yourself and you think, okay, where am I not doing great, but what am I doing well? And that's really important to recognize too, especially if you've been training for a long period of time, because we are our own worst critics. The next question is how I felt physically and mentally. So it's not only a physical battle whenever we're learning martial arts. So if you're reviewing this later, hey, I was really, really off today, but by the way, I got a lot of bad news today at work, so I was not there mentally. It helps you kind of understand where were you at in your headspace just a little bit. And then at the bottom, I put some extra notes. Sometimes there's some things that you want to ask the instructor or record later. Or maybe you had like an epiphany during class and you're like, oh my gosh, I just realized this. Great place to put it. We all love a good inspirational quote. So every third page, you will find an inspirational quote. So like on this random page I turned to, first say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. And Epictetus, I think is how you say his name. But I put in every third page, there is a quote that can kind of be inspirational for you. And then in the back, we've got just some spaces for some extra notes, or if there are certain quotes that really hit you that you want to write down. guys, I cannot tell you how many times I've been at the festival, for example, that Master Maurice was talking about, and somebody says something, and they're not even trying to, but they say something that just really, really hits you, and you've got to jot it down. So that's kind of like an overview of what this journal is made to be, but I wanted to write something that was useful to the brand new student and the person that's been training for 50 years.
And that is awesome. I mean, what a great resource. I mean, because it is so important to capture that stuff. It will help you progress, and then it will help you reflect later. What a great resource for any martial artist, especially the ones just starting, like you said, because you get in that habit early and just keep that habit through. It's going to help your journey be better.
Absolutely.
Dixon wanted, I think you answered this already, said, what was your inspiration for producing this latest creation, your fantastic martial arts journal? You sort of answered that. Yeah. And Dixon also said, I thought George's newest nickname was John Wick. Way to go, Mr. Kieran.
Yeah, we like to call him Mr. Vic sometimes in class. He cut it now, but he had kind of like the same length hair Keanu had and had a black suit on. I think you were actually there that year as well, so at the festival. But yeah, Mr. Wick.
Yep. Well, what a fantastic resource. We've been going for about a half an hour, so I want to sort of start wrapping it up a little bit. Appreciate the guests come on here and said hello. Want you to just share. Well, before that, where can people get that book? We didn't mention that.
Yeah, so I've actually listed it on Amazon. I am proud to say, as of this recording, if you search Martial Arts Journal, it will be the third one on the page. The two above me are sponsored posts, so they get a little more elevated. But I've had an amazing response, and because of that, you can find it very easily on Amazon, which is super cool. So you can type in, I need to write that down. You can also type in Martial Arts Journal, and it will come up. And yeah, if you guys have any questions, feel free to reach out. I've also got some stuff on YouTube as well. I like to post different martial arts videos and educational content. So you can find me there at Dr. Nikolai Lee. And it's fairly easy to find. But the book is definitely accessible. And I think Amazon has made it fully Prime now, so you can get it the next day. So you don't even have to wait. It's beautiful.
That's awesome. Yeah. So is that the best places to find you, Amazon and the YouTube channel?
That'll be the best places, yeah. I'm on Instagram as well. Feel free if you'd like to go on there. I know we work with our students at the church, and I guess Facebook is considered old now. But I'm a Facebook guy, so you can also find me on there if you'd like. And I'd love to connect if anybody has any questions or they want to reach out and give me some response on the book, or if they have any questions about martial arts, whatever the case may be, it'd be great to connect.
That's awesome. I appreciate you inviting people for that. What would be your closing thoughts before we leave here? Anything special you want to say to folks?
If you are considering training, do it. Because even though you may be a white belt and you may be brand new, I want you to remember that the most amazing grandmasters out there started as a white belt. Everybody had a day one. And the best thing you can do is get off the couch. It might be your first day, but you are one day more than being on the couch. So just get up, get out there, and tomorrow's going to come anyways. So you might as well go for it. Whatever that may be. If it's not training, it might be like considering a career change. It might be doing something like that. But tomorrow's going to come anyways. So you got to go for it.
Thank you much. That's some awesome advice for everybody. Really appreciate you joining me this morning. Hope everybody checks out that martial art journal. If you're a martial artist, just a great resource. Remember to go to enjoylifesafely.com and get signed up for the newsletter if you're not on that yet. Make it a fantastic Friday, and I'll be back to see you tomorrow.
All right. Thank you. Thanks for having me.